Welcome to New Home Insights, the podcast from John Burns Research Consulting. I'm your host, Dean Worley. If you want to follow market trends, demographics, capital, new ideas, and endeavors that touch on housing, we're going to try to make sense of that every couple of weeks. Let's go. Hello, listeners. This is Dean Worley for the New Home Insights podcast. We are heading back to design today with a focus on market trends for new home products, really a further focus on specifically the kitchen and bath products. Think counters and faucets and everything else you have in your kitchen and baths, but really these kind of trends actually provide and kind of reflect on wider generalization to the housing market as a whole. And to do that today, we are joined by Bill Darcy. Bill is the global president and CEO of the NKBA, the National Kitchen and Bath Association. He also heads up the Kitchen and Bath Industry Show, the KBIS. We'll hear both those acronyms, I have no doubt, which is this hugely anticipated trade show that focuses on, of course, you guessed it, the kitchen and bath sectors. So what this means is that Bill has this both on the ground and very high level view of this absolutely massive kitchen and bath sector. How massive that is, we'll actually get started and talk about that in just a minute. I'll let Bill share that. But trust me, it's huge. First of all, Bill, how you doing?
Thanks, Dean. I'm doing well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to chat with you today.
For sure. I'm glad you can come on. We like to keep as varied as possible, and we'd like to come back to building products and those kinds of trends as often as possible. So let's first start with you a little bit. Can you give the folks a little bit of a background on you, where you came from, and about the NKBA?
Yeah, sure. I've been with NKBA now almost 18 years. Before that, spent the majority of my career in sports marketing, actually, as some people find interesting. Last many years with NASCAR and with Team Penske. So come from that business, but now obviously almost closing in on 20 years with NKBA. Started in the business development area, proceeded to be the director of marketing, and then kind of, I guess, worked my way up to this opportunity that now I've been the CEO for 12 years, since 2012. As you know, we run the association for all things kitchen and bath and design, remodeling, retail, manufacturing. So we have a unique association in that we really represent so many different verticals in the space. And also the owners of the Kitchen and Bath Industry Show. We celebrated our 60th anniversary of NKBA recently, and then last year, and then this year we celebrated the 60th anniversary of the Kitchen and Bath Industry Show, which as you say, is the biggest event in North America and challenging the world, I guess, for design and construction. And we've been partnering with the Home Builders Association since 2014, so a little over 10 years as co-location partners with the International Builder Show. So this event has gotten only bigger individually, but also in conjunction with the Builder Show. So the market, the event, and a lot of things in between, really an honor to be serving the industry and now as global president and CEO.
That's awesome. I did not know you were in sports marketing. That's interesting. Okay. NASCAR, huh? All right.
Yeah. Another show on that if you want.
Yes. We'll do a weird off-brand NASCAR show. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's start with just pure size. I mean, it really, kitchen and bath, honestly, I'm not going to lie, the size of that market is a little bigger than I thought, which doesn't make sense. I should have known that. It's just a huge part of your home are in your kitchen and your bathrooms. So let's start with that. Give us a sense of how big this market is.
Yeah, year-end 2023, we were sized at $179 billion. So very, very large. In January of this year, we do our forecast for the year with John Burns in partnership there. And we're looking at a 3% decline for 2024, which would bring it down to $173 billion. Still pretty massive.
Yeah. When you guys do that, what are you looking at to measure market movement, market size, and in your market projections? What are your key metrics, your key indicators?
Yeah, it's really all things. I mean, obviously K&B makes up such the core of the home, and all the spending around the kitchen and bath is really, we feel, as consumers feel, drive that home. So really all spending related to kitchen and bath services, products, all things in between. So again, even me in the business for a while, when we first sized the market and you see these numbers, neighborhood of almost to $200 billion, putting them up against a bunch of different markets. It's a massive, massive market within the category of the home.
What's going on with that 3% decline projection? Why are you feeling that's the right number for this year?
It's been an interesting ride as for many people, post-pandemic. We were very fortunate within the pandemic and to see the rise that we did in the amount of spending in this space. But things normalized a bit. And obviously inflation has become the pressure in addition to just the cost and supply, skilled labor and the laborers to do the project. So all those things relative to cost has moderated. And just things that we continue to watch, in addition to inflation, what the Fed's doing about inflation and how they're controlling it. And then obviously in 2024, we also have the presidential election coming. So these are critical things we're watching to kind of come up with that forecast. And again, 3% is still 3%, but we feel, that market is still very strong. And in addition to that, all the data shows from 2025 to 2030, we can expect very healthy remodeling growth.
So long term, or a little bit, or even near-ish term, a pickup, a little bit more normalization of that market?
Yes. As I talk to individual members anecdotally, everybody is, very pleased, backlogs and, very positive. But it's really I think we say it's a bumpy ride in 24 only because the prior expectations were the growth was such a strong trajectory that even moderated normal now is seen to be a little bit short, so I say, we will go through the bumpy ride of 2024 and dealing with inflation and the other pressures that we mentioned, but the long-term prognosis is extraordinarily strong for the second half of the decade.
It really is amazing how much we are still feeling the impacts of COVID, especially on measurement and metrics. It really has this outsized impact. And it's going to take a while before we're at a time we can say we can feel pretty normal and look at trends with the kind of market normal that we used to have. And now with inflation, which is, again, something that hasn't occurred at this levels in a very long time.
Yeah, agreed. Definitely agreed. You keep saying that, but it is true that when is the post-pandemic trend going to be normalized that we can watch it, that it's not influenced by the prior thing, and it's still influenced there for sure.
Exactly. I think it's still some time before we hit that. Let's talk about this kitchen and bath market index that you guys, in fact, you partnered up with us. I know that sounds self-serving, but we were happy to do it. And I tell us about that market index and what it's telling you.
At first, just a little bit about the index itself, because we were looking at could NKBA provide some relevant data to support intel in the market that wasn't already there? I mean, obviously, you're very well familiar. There's a lot of indexes in the market. We just didn't want to be another index. So when we looked at what we could do, and then obviously talk to John and see if there was something there. We started this in Q4 2018, and Trisha and I laugh once in a while that we said, when are we going to have a trend? And now we despite what we just talked about with the pandemic and, but pre-pandemic, through the pandemic, and now post-pandemic, we have some very strong trend data. And we're just very thankful for the partnership with John and the team. And we produce 4 reports a year. It's a quarterly index. And the interesting thing is we have this real-time gauge of conditions, focuses on single-family remodel replacement markets, leans towards high-income households. But I think the most unique part is really that it represents these 4 sectors: design, retail, manufacturing, and building and construction. So it's quite unique as far as indexes go, because we have this, breadth of membership representation. And that really gives a great sense, and I'm super proud that, all the members that we talk to and other industry pros now use it as a very significant decision-making tool in their business.
Yeah, I mean, because you guys are the trade association for all these folks, I imagine you get really good feedback and you get really comprehensive feedback from those folks.
Absolutely, yes. No, it's interesting how you compare the data between the sectors. Sometimes, majority of the time it's similar. Sometimes it's whoever's closest to the consumer is reacting that way versus, longer lead time, a manufacturer versus a designer, for example. But when you aggregate all this data together and you present that number both from, current and future conditions, I think the member, despite the category that they're in, really feels this has a full spectrum of opinion and allocates that opinion amongst the category. So I think it's a wonderful tool, and Tricia and the team have worked very, very hard with your team at John Burns to continue this, and we get a tremendous amount of interest and participation, and then of course when the results come out, wanting to know what it's saying.
So let's talk results. It's an index. So indexes give us a really good idea of market movement and market changes. That's why because they are standardized, they really are perfect for that kind of thing. What's it telling us right now?
Yeah, current rating. So Q1 of this year rating is 56, and that's up 2 points from 54 in Q4 2023. So we say beginning to expand. Anything in this diffusion index above 50 indicates expansion versus below 50 indicating contraction. So we don't get overly excited about 2 points up. However, based on the trend and what we're looking at, we are excited about that being up 2 points. Current conditions was at 50, and that's up also a little over 2 points from prior quarter. But the most exciting part for us, which is aligned with the other data that we see, is this future conditions. So our members are giving that a 72. And that is across all 4 sectors. So the future conditions, a lot of optimism, despite what we just talked about is some of the tumultuous 2024, things that are happening that we're watching and moderating against.
That's pretty amazing that they're that sanguine about the near-term future. I think, correct me, but during the height of COVID, it didn't get much higher in terms of the current condition ratings of that 72, did it?
Correct. No, yes. And that, optimistically, say surprising us in a good way.
Okay.
Based on all these factors and all the data we see, I know we'll get into that later, some of the foundational, kind of core growth that we see in remodeling, especially in kitchen and bath, do point to that. It just impresses me that our members are seeing that quarter to quarter, and this optimism continues to grow even stronger to get to the 72 for the future. We were very, very happy with that, not only purely from the industry perspective, mostly.
There are concerns, though, right? There are some challenges ahead for the kitchen and bath sector. What are your folks telling you are their biggest concerns? Also, from your analysis of this sector, what are your biggest concerns about the near term, at least?
Yeah, it's been throughout the history of KBMI. It's the availability and cost of skilled labor. The only time that drops from the number one is, when we have ships in the harbor and nobody can get materials. And then, that drops to number 2. And then as soon as that stabilizes, it jumps back to number 1 as the number 1 concern. Interest and inflation, even all that we talk about is probably the most common business, term that's used, today is inflation. Availability and the cost of labor is still above inflation. So I think we see this as a generational challenge. And there's a lot of people working very hard to support this, but foundationally, being someone that has 3 children in the school systems and just what the expectations are of young people and how much emphasis goes on, especially college, and all the things, if you have your own children or relatives and things like this. This is a massive challenge. I could talk, definitely a whole show just on this, but this is to me the biggest concern, and will just keep costs higher, and you will pay more for everything. And it's not going to be like, a couple of years from now, you're going to have all these plumbers running around that you didn't have. This is not something that's solved in a short-term time frame.
Yeah, we'll be talking about labor for as long as probably forever, to be honest.
Right.
As we
Agreed.
Because our population just gets older and older. I know we have a big Gen Z bump coming up, but like you mentioned, those folks often would rather be baristas than work in the trades.
Agreed.
But you have a ton of optimism there. Obviously, you have that 72 future forward-looking index. So what are the things that are driving that optimism about this sector?
Yeah, you're right. Despite all that, 4 things especially. Mortgage rates, as much as we're watching this and we know that when mortgage rates fall below 5%, you see acceleration in activity. 80% of homeowners with outstanding mortgages are locked in below 5%. So there's still not a lot of motivation to leave that home with the low interest rate, which then becomes, how do I make the home I'm living in better? So all that drives to remodeling. There's a lot of home equity in the household, and we know this, the crazy times of the pandemic. However, we still have this extremely strong levels of home equity. So when you do invest in that asset that's appreciating, you feel much better about that. So that's another driver. And then we have these aging homes. I talk about this a lot. There are 22 million homes in what we call prime remodeling years, and that will grow to 24 million by 2027. So there's a lot of homes in America that need repair and replacement and remodeling. So you have this strong amount of inventory that needs work. And then the last, which is maybe more recently noted, is this great transfer of wealth. So we looked at those millennials, those poor millennials that graduated with massive debt, no houses for them to buy. If they buy the houses, the interest rate's high. It's a generation that, how did these folks get out of debt? Well, how they get out of debt is that the baby boomers will leave them an estimated $68 trillion in wealth. So what that will do is enable these millennials to purchase not only primary homes, but vacation homes. And what will they do with those homes? They will repair and remodel and upgrade those kitchens and baths. So those are the four things that we are really excited about. The optimism for those folks in the kitchen and bath, manufacturing, retail, design, and remodeling sectors to have a lot of work coming up here in the years ahead.
That aging home factor, I think, by the way, it stays below the radar very often, because in the housing market, a lot of the focus is on those new growth areas, those high growth areas, often mostly in the Sun Belt. We forget that there's a tremendous amount of opportunity there in these older locations, these slower growth locations in Chicago, the upper Midwest, the Northeast, because those houses are old. They need help. They need
absolutely.
They need care.
You're right. You do focus on some of those emerging markets in Austin and the Southeast, and these markets that are growing in Colorado and Denver, but you do forget sometimes about those. We know they are there, but you forget how old they are, and it's a matter of time before they will need to be remodeled and repaired, and that's just the nature of the cycle of the home.
Before we move on and talk about sustainability, I know you guys have this connection with kind of the European kitchen and bath world. What's that? What's that initiative?
Yeah, so we started a Global Connect program with the really kind of twofold. One is to help manufacturers around the world who are interested in the North American market, and the other is to bring design trends from America, to Europe and vice versa, and also help these domestic manufacturers sell product in other places. So the initial part, and really is what's playing into our hands right now very, very strongly, is Europe's inflation. And when we talk about our own inflation, we can talk about it humbly when we're talking about what's going on in Europe. And as much as I've traveled there, when we think about what hits you, right in the eyes when you drive around, is gas prices and just, the basics, fundamentals of life. And, they look at our prices like it's on a discount or something, So the North America is really super attractive and appealing to European brands, especially European brands, because of, despite all these factors, the health of our market. And again, we say inflation, but they say it's all relative, right? So we have a lot of interest, and through KBIS, we've seen this through pavilions of different countries, especially where countries have aggregated their brands of their market, in Germany, in Italy, the UK, especially, that have said North America is a lot of opportunity for us to sell our products, and NKBA is the avenue to help us do that. So we've been very fortunate to be able to establish this, and I think it also gives a lot of insight into other markets and behaviors and what brands are doing in different places.
Yeah, I think a lot of people in the U.S. see those European brands as kind of some cachet, kind of some. Is it a little bit more concentrated in the high-end part of your sector because of that?
It is. Yes, you're absolutely correct. One thing on the plumbing, appliances, those products, but on cabinetry, as we call them, furniture, as they're called in Europe, it's quite interesting because a lot of the trends do flow from Europe to America. And what you're seeing historically would see, like in a cabinet style, you would see maybe popular on the coasts in America, where now you're seeing this interest in more of a contemporary modern style that, say, the millennials in Gen Z has. And that is, very European. So you have the cachet, you're correct, but you also have the practicality of some of the products appealing to the interests of the younger generations in America.
Okay. Let's switch over to sustainability. Sustainability has become an important sector in just everything, every factor, every industry, in one way or another. So you folks at NKBA have something called Sustainability in Kitchen and Bath Design, a report that you folks produced, and I think was released in April. Let's talk about something before we get to the results. Just kind of frame that study. What exactly did that study entail, and what was the point of it?
Yeah, we feel like sustainability is one of the most important, things to inform our members that there is. One of the most informative topics. He ranks right up there with AI and some of the other things in technology. It's very important, very relevant, and it's actually bubbled up in some of our other studies. It's been there for a while, but it's much more strong recently. So we decided to benchmark this amongst designers and specifiers to better understand their current perceptions and some of the barriers to widespread integration.
So let's talk about the results. What are kind of some of the key findings from this report?
Sure. So the designers, kitchen and bath designers, our members feel that it's very important, but less than half say they are well informed on the subject. I thought that was a bit interesting. Homeowners, they also say homeowners rarely bring it up. So as much as we say in mainstream media and certainly in the automotive space and things like that, you hear a lot more about it. We've learned that it's really up to the designers to lead the conversation and make recommendations for products and practices for the homeowner to consider. I think we feel that there will be more widespread integration coming, but they will be based on, we feel, three things. One is that brands are creating these kitchen and bath products that are practical, well-priced, and attractive. And that's kind of the recipe. Not everything sustainable. It has those three factors. So we feel like that those three factors, practicality, price, and attractiveness, will drive further interest in K&B sustainable products. Designers have to be willing to recommend them, and I think they generally are. Things that are good for the customer, the designers will recommend. So it kind of, that a little bit goes hand in hand. And then the industry's continued education about sustainability, because clearly even designers themselves who are maybe on the front end of this feel like they are not educated enough. So I think from NKBA's perspective, from the product manufacturer's perspective, and other places, this will all happen, I believe, and we believe, and you will see the sustainability of kitchen and bath products grow, because I think most everybody really wants things to be sustainable and more protecting of the Earth's resources and less harmful to our planet. So I think everybody's heart is in the right place. It's a matter of how you marry that up with practicality and cost and things that can truly be implemented in a kitchen or a bath specifically for our members.
I don't know if you had the data to comment on this, but could there be also a kind of a affluence factor here as well, a price factor here as well? That is, will there be more demand at the higher end parts of the market for sustainability, because those folks can kind of afford to be concerned about that, whereas the low end, they're really much more just purely priced focus?
Yeah, I can't speak to specific data, but I believe it's true what you just said. I think that it's very reasonable to believe. I remember this was 2008, 2009, when there was green design and it was like, does everybody have to make everything out of bamboo? And people didn't know it's like, even if I want to, I don't know what to do. There's certainly, and as luxury continues to drive us sometimes out of what we feel is a little bit of a mild, flatness of the market, those consumers certainly have more ability to spend more and, against some of this without some of that. I just need to get this project done as affordably as possible. And if this is going to cost me 3x, I can't do it, Yeah. So I think prices will continue to come down. I think as more and more adaptability is there. And I think more awareness is certainly there. It did surprise me most of this study of the fact that consumers weren't driving it more. And I think that will also change as the more established millennials and Gen Zs become more mainstream buyers. I think there's a much higher expectation for those generations. It's not so much, oh, what do you do? It's like, of course you do. So I think that will differentiate some of the market products when those brands are. But you have to have some scalability of this, and you have to have some practical costs because just because it's sustainable doesn't mean I can afford it, even if I want to.
I think I know the answer to this, and I think I like it, but I want to ask you a tougher question. Do you, honestly, in your heart of hearts, do the major manufacturers in the kitchen and bath space really want to build sustainable products? It's genuine. They want to provide sustainable alternatives for their homeowners and their customers, even if sometimes, as you said, those customers aren't, strenuously demanding it.
I believe yes. I think there's a unanimous yes, in my opinion. Some of the product manufacturers, plumbing, appliances, countertop services have a serious commitment to this. And it's actually absent of the demand, right? It's really just they want to do good for the planet and have figured out ways where they can create, whether it's using recycled materials and countertops, or it's a life cycle of a product, lasting years longer than it normally would, or where they're sourcing the component parts, all those things. I think this is already happening, and we have already a massive amount of manufacturer commitment to this, but it's not flowing into the consumer yet in a mainstream sort of way.
And it's smart too. It's smart from a business sense because it's getting ahead of the curve in what we'll see, and the election coming up here will have something to say about this, but there may be some top-down requirements coming in the future along this line. So getting ahead of that is just smart.
Yes, agreed.
We have a end here. We'll go to a section on trends. Not a lightning round, but I want you to give us a sense of what's going on with trends in the kitchen and bath. So I have a few questions in that regard. Let's kind of run through them as best we can. First up, let's go to the bathroom, not literally, figuratively, and let's talk about tubs and showers. I've seen this more and more because I walk a lot of models in my day job, and you're starting to see fewer bathtubs, especially at the lower end, a shower only. And you talk to the sales agents, a lot of times a bathtub seems a little bit of a luxury. Are bathtubs becoming passé? How are sales of that going versus showers?
Yeah, so first, it's a great question. First, 96%, so almost all designers tell us showers are important in the primary bath. I think we probably already know this, right?
Yeah.
As for tubs, our designers tell us that half their clients use tubs and half do not. Okay, so that's in existing projects and inventory.
Okay.
The most popular configuration our designers expect over the next 3 years is a separate tub and shower with double shower head. So that was very specific, double shower head in the shower. But back to your point, freestanding tubs are considered essential in a luxury bath. So you start to see where the necessity of that tub is more on the higher end. Then is it practical in the square footage you have to work with to have this, what was very mainstream and traditional at one point and in the times of the U.S. market, that is now becoming less when you say that, you must have a shower almost 100% of the time.
Mm-hmm. So especially in those, when you're trying to build kind of starter homes and you have a certain size you want to hit, that's kind of in the master bath, even certainly in the secondary baths, that's kind of the easiest thing, the tub, to get rid of to get down to the home size you need to be.
Right.
Let's move over, staying in the bathroom, to the toilet. I know toilets just seem to be getting smarter and smarter all the time. Are smart toilets capturing more and more of the American market?
They are. It's funny about, I don't know how many years ago it was, 8-9 years ago, I was at KBIS and one of the brands introduced this revolutionary smart toilet, and the price was what I deemed a lot. And I talked to some high-end designers and they're like, we're going to specify these all the time. Wow. So I thought that was interesting. You also have, I think you have this aging in place or, living in place design. So, we had our COVID disaster, if you would, of elderly living in these places. And I think, nobody really wants to put their loved one not in the home. And how do you start designing your home so you can accommodate loved ones? Interestingly, this comfort height toilet is becoming the new standard. 89% is specified in primary baths. That's just a higher toilet. So that's interesting. And then the self-cleaning is definitely something that was maybe considered a luxury in the past, but has become more affordable and mainstream. So we see that happening. But, designers tell us about 60% of designers expect smart toilets to be popular over the next 3 years. So I think this is becoming more and more an expectation than just a toilet.
Yeah. Are you seeing the smart toilets that can actually track our health? Are you seeing, I know those exist. Are you seeing those?
Not yet. I actually saw that many years ago in Asia initially, and it was not only tracking, the toilet, the data was going into the mirror, and some of this I think you're seeing more now in elder care facilities where you have, it's like when you can check the pH of things and it can tell you this predictive analytics on something that might be bad happening, these types of things. I think you're going to see more and more of that as tech mainstream, because I think the average consumer might not, stretch their budget to get that. But as costs come down and becomes more practical, and you do have multiple generations living in the home, I think these are fantastic things that can help. But, hospitals and elder care facilities, first, and then residential is probably soon thereafter.
And maybe someday professional sports leagues can demand that their players use smart toilets to check steroids and any performance.
Yeah. There you go. You got that. Yeah, that too.
100% of the time. Surprise question, Bill. But are bidets getting any traction in the U.S.?
We don't really track that, but I think they are more in the luxury. It's kind of the same story as the other thing. I think when you have the room to accommodate a bidet, people would have them. But and then you also have this, are you remodeling the bathroom for an elderly parent that's coming in to live with you? A lot it has to do with, really the cost and the availability of space. But I think that is deemed more of a luxury.
Okay. Yeah. How about kitchens? Let's move over out of the bathroom into the kitchen. There's been a kind of a minimalism trend in kitchens for a while. Is that fading? Is that still holding on?
Still holding on. I think this, as I mentioned, this European style cabinetry, more contemporary cabinetry, minimalist, clutter-free. I think the clutter accelerated during COVID when everybody was in the kitchen doing more than just eating a meal. And so it was like, where do I put all this stuff? The kitchen is getting bigger. The island's getting bigger. It's really the minimalist thought and interest is very, very strong.
I'm hyper minimalist to the point where, like, my wife puts just stuff all over the island and everywhere, just little vases, things like that. Yeah. I literally opened the fridge and my elbow hit a long, skinny vase on the side of the counter and shattered it everywhere. I'm thinking, I would be one of those persons who has just nothing on any surface whatsoever except for stuff you use every day. But
yeah, I would say that we in our house with 3 children, that would certainly be the goal. And once in a while, I'm like, wow, we cleaned off the countertop, but doesn't happen most of the time because it's the middle of the kitchen and it's a kind of a nice place to put stuff. It's like a magnet for that, So yeah,
definitely is here. How about interconnectivity or just this indoor outdoor, another trend that came and really got heightened from COVID, where everyone going to have a lot of access to the outdoors. It was healthier and safer out there. Are we seeing that in the kitchen, this connection between indoor and outdoor?
Yes, and I think we will continue to see more and more of that. Homeowners are adding these larger windows, oversized glass doors, even walls of glass, anything we can do to bring the outdoor in. I think this is both health minded, in addition to the fact of the acceleration of that during COVID and being stuck in one place and wanting to enjoy the outdoors, and all the data and science telling us that the more time we could spend outdoors, the better. So we actually had one designer in the upper West that said there will never be a home that her firm designs without an outdoor kitchen ever. Oh, so, wow. We, growing up in the Northeast, for me, we have a consolidated time frame for enjoyment of the outdoor spaces. But if you look at a large portion of America, where if you're living in a climate that is you can really extend the time you can outside, I think you're seeing more and more outdoor kitchens, and definitely the luxury space. I think this is not only a trend, it's a boom, and one of the biggest things we are tracking going forward.
You mean full on, some kind of a stovetop barbecue maybe, and a sink within
and beyond
California room?
Correct.
Like
Correct. Okay. Yep. It's like, exactly. It's not just there's a grill and there's a place to sit. Like, to me, that's the foundation of it. This is just some of the extravagant projects we see is really, how do you, make take your kitchen living room area, which is now primarily the kitchen, and have a wall that almost looks like you can roll it up like a garage door, and the outside is the inside is the outside. And it goes that extreme. So I think more and more we see, the extravagant and beautiful outdoor grills and all the products and cabinet designs for outdoors. Again, I think this is a big, big market right now and will continue to grow very strong.
It does make sense to have your food prep space, not just in the kitchen, you're running it out to where the grill is, but have it right next to the grill. But again, this is something that kind of a scenario is definitely going to be focused on the upper end market because it takes some space. It takes less density for that to be realized. Okay.
Right.
Let's stay in the kitchen. Let's talk about the aforementioned islands where I think we both agree you should not put a whole ring of unsturdy vases across it so someone can break them. But what's happening with islands? Are those still critical, or any trends in terms of kitchen islands?
Yeah, I think the island is stealing the dining room. It's like, the dining room wall's coming down and the island's getting, it's getting all the love, as it should. I mean, personally, I love it. And, whether you have friends over or you just eat your meal and it's an extension of everybody sitting at the table and now they're sitting at the island. Yeah. The one thing I love, this is something I just read recently in one of your other John Burns reports, is that homes may be getting smaller, but kitchens are getting bigger. And I think that is the truth. This whole tiny home trend that, people are tracking doesn't necessarily mean the kitchen is getting smaller. It's just getting a higher percentage of the footprint of the home. So the island is the heart of that center of the home, if you would, if you put the heart around the kitchen where it is. And I think, yes, the pandemic, increased this even more so, because where is the gathering space? It kind of always was there. It just, how did these get so big? And they're multi-purpose. And I think that's really, it's pure value. Put the cabinets underneath, puts a couple stools there. Maybe you have a sink and a cooktop. Maybe you have nothing. It's all that means that the island is a place that you can lean against or sit next to, and you can, gather your family and your friends and enjoy the holidays or just regular days too.
Home of the future, huge kitchen, family room, hybrid room with little sleep pods attached to it, and that's it.
Right. Bring your sleeping right next to the island, and then you have everything you need.
That's all we need. It really is true. The kitchen becomes that central focus all the time when you have folks over, for sure. And just within the family too. What about, tell me what curves and reeds are within kitchens and kitchen islands.
Yeah, this is something new that we started to track the popularity of cane or reed finishes in kitchen cabinets that was revealed in our 2024 kitchen design trends. So these reeded cabinet doors or islands have these vertical or horizontal grooves known as reeds. And so they're visually interesting. So they provide a design aesthetic, but also consumers like them because they can make smudges and fingerprints less noticeable. So they serve two different purposes. And are quite interesting, and I think a trend that you'll see coming forward.
Okay. Anything else on cabinets that you're seeing trend wise?
Just this that wood is still the popular wood material, and painted is very popular. It continues to be the most I'd say painted is at 53, but it feels to me that there's even more of that. So cabinets, I think just the solid wood painted are the trend right now.
How about countertops?
Countertops, quartz passed granite years ago, and I still occasionally run into somebody. They're like, "Oh, I'm doing my kitchen, Bill. What do you think?" I'm looking at this granite. I'm like, "Granite? Like granite, really? And granite itself is like almost like a brand, right?
Yeah.
But quartz is the dominating surface material and just continues to take a larger and larger market share to the point that I think our study this year is 73% of the material specified was quartz. So you're just going to continue to see more and more quartz.
It is weird how that happened right before our eyes, man, because granite does have historically had some cachet. And
it did. Absolutely.
Quartz, it's all about quartz now. So let's stay in the kitchen, but look up to the lighting. What's going on with lighting in terms of sales and trends?
Yeah, if we did our first lighting study, actually very, very recently, enough that we are hosting an event in Manhattan this week at Lutron's showroom to release the study. And it's quite interesting because, I found this actually not interesting, but somewhat frustrating that most homes that were originally built to code have lighting that's grossly inadequate, particularly in the kitchen. So I don't know how this standard was developed, but certainly we can, be rational and say, yes, proper lighting in the kitchen or bath enhances the functionality, elevates things and aesthetics. I've been in a couple lighting showrooms before, and when they moderate the room to certain temperatures and styles and moods, and that you can appreciate this philosophically as someone has explained to you, but when you see it, it is literally dramatic. So the designers who participated in our study told us that one of the main reasons their real estate projects sold so quickly is because of the curated lighting. So builders might want to know that good lighting sells homes, and it is an underappreciated at the end of the project decision, and it is a more complicated sale direct to consumer. So I think, in our world, you want to use a designer, and you always should use a designer, and that designer will help you kind of marry up the lighting to the kitchen. It's not just, oh yeah, what about the lights? That shouldn't be the way it's thought about. So hopefully some of the study results will inspire more of that. Because it is more complicated for the consumer to just wander around and, pick out the pendants. It's not that easy. It really should be, but it is a hugely important part, especially the kitchen and the bath. And we feel that, more, the consumer should be asking for designers' help when they're printing their projects.
I don't know about harsher lights, though. It depends. I guess it depends on how old you are. The harsh light of the bathroom, for instance, shows me that I'm looking more and more like the Crypt Keeper from the Creep Show HBO series.
Yes.
So I don't know if
intense LED without dimmable is a little rough when you fire that up in the AM. I'm right there with you, right there.
So maybe the muted lights, a soft filter too, would be helpful for the kitchen. But you're right. Kitchens historically have been underlit. For sure. And that's a place where you do need good lighting there, for sure.
Agreed.
Let's go and sort of end with, I'm going to have a surprise question for you at the end, with any kind of bold predictions that you want to make about this kitchen and bath space.
Yeah, I'm not sure how bold they are, but some things I saw at KBIS that made an impact, and we're hearing from our members and are certainly our design council, is that neutral colors have taken a bit of a backseat to color. And we think that's here to stay. You saw, some of these bold colored kitchens, and I think that's definitely a trend. The healthy living kitchen, not shocking based on all that we're talking about, healthy eating, healthy cooking. This is not only a trend, I think this is going to stick around for a while, for as long as we could see forward. And then the baths, integrated tech, everything in the bath is controlled and customized by the way the homeowner lives. And I think this whole customization factor maybe it's logical in the bathroom to think about, but it's definitely, I think, in our own personal worlds, consumers want more customization to everything that they buy and they do and they really expect. And I think when you can really preset the temperature to the shower and get all the way as close as you can get to creating a spa-like experience in your own home, I mean, that's the most appealing thing. So I think you're going to continue to see more and more tech. And like you talked about, these data analysis in toilets and all that, there's a lot of tech is available to make these great things. And I think you're going to see more and more of them as they scale towards the mid-market especially.
It's another way that we realize how pervasive tech is. Everything, car companies have to be tech companies. And now building products have to be tech companies. A part of the company has to be super tech savvy to going forward, or they're going to fail.
Agreed.
Now, my
you got a surprise question for me? Okay,
yeah,
I'm ready.
Surprise
Go ahead,
question
Dean.
for you.
Here we go.
I should have asked it when we were talking about the labor, because it has to do with that, about the trades and younger folks not wanting to go into the trades. There's something, I guess, that's trending. Hashtag is blue collar cool, that I think you've talked about in the past. Is that something that really has the potential to make trades a little sexier for younger workers and bring some folks back?
I think some of this, to me, in the spirit of further education, I think, who doesn't want their child to be more educated, right? I mean, they go to school and then hopefully they accomplish their dreams. And if they want to get educated further, what is the end game on what is their happiness? How do they define as happiness? And I think, unfortunately, it's the regimented thought that, well, you go to college, or, well, you're not really going to be that successful. I mean, that's really a tragedy, if you would. Then I think what you had is the cost of higher education is so totally out of control. I mean, everywhere, it's so out of control. And I think it gets to a ceiling where it's like, okay, am I going to go get this XYZ degree if it costs $300,000? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not like, okay, my parents had to, run around in junk cars and had 3 jobs to make sure I got to go to the college I wanted to. And I would do the same thing for my kids. But is it really like college or bust type of thing? So I think this blue collar cool is coming from the fact that, you know what, before I commit to this money, I better really know what I want to do. Because, I mean, listen, I was in an era, Gen Xer, where I went to college and like most of your friends had no idea what they were even going to do. Yeah. They went there to figure that out. Yeah. That's kind of an expensive investment. And especially if, I after 4 years, I graduated with some that said they still didn't know what it was going to be. Okay. And it cost them, I mean, it didn't cost what it costs today, but it, relatively speaking, costs a lot of money. So I think the gig economy and everybody wants to make an app and everybody wants to get rich in 5 minutes and all that is certainly not gone away. But I think the more that there is this pressure of the cost of higher education, and what is that? Do the math and say, you know what? Maybe I'm not even good at that. Or maybe I could be even better at this. And I shouldn't be like, and one thing I've seen in Europe, there's not this stereotype so much as in America of kids that didn't go to college. And the funny thing is, I was at my son's, one of his baseball games, and he's going to be a junior, so he's still an underclassman. But the senior kids, they announce like, oh, the senior night, this one's going to this college, and this one's going to be an electrician, and this one's going to be a plumber. And it wasn't a ton, but it was definitely more than I remember. So I do wonder if, anecdotally, you hear this, I do think there's momentum around, I can have a successful, enjoyable life doing what I want to do. And even if I didn't go to college for that, and listen, there's plenty of professional trades that are still underserved, engineering, and, there's a ton of them that we're not satisfying all the demands of labor with just, not going to college for skilled labor, filling jobs. But that being said, I think this, there's so much with social media, and all you need is the right person and the right cool factor and the right story, and you have momentum. And I hope that really does come for it, because I think it's very hard for schools with the demands, the budgets they have to work with, the demands they have to really give kids the full spectrum of what they could do. And that's what breaks my heart mostly, is that a kid graduates and all they know is like, if I don't go to college, I'm going to fail at life. That is not right. But when you talk to, guidance counselors and things like that, they're so overwhelmed with everything as far as fundamental education, they don't have the time to have this conversation with a lot of young people. So hopefully the parents and the kids and this blue collar cool and other similar themes will continue to drive interest, because certainly there's a ton of work for a long time. And if you want to, enter this industry, any really in construction, you can make yourself a heck of a living and even have the opportunity to be your own, business owner. So a lot of things for young people if they, open their minds to it. And as these things you're talking about are starting to create awareness and appeal to it.
We're going to have to overcome some stigma, though, because it is. And it's so easy to sound elitist for white-collar folks to say, hey, look, there's opportunities in the blue-collar world. You should think about them. But that doesn't make it not true. It's clearly true, and they can make a good living. It's just going to take – we're going to have to overcome that stigma about, no, you have to go to college. That's the only way you succeed.
100%.
We'll see. Well, Bill, thank you so much. I'm glad I asked you that surprise question. I knew you had something to say on that, and you did. Thank you.
You're welcome, Dean. It's been a pleasure. I love talking about this subject. It's a very passionate part of mine. Is just helping young people, helping young people find jobs and getting them understanding that when you talk about these other jobs that they don't know about, that they wish they would have heard about, versus being, junior in college, trying to figure out what they want to do with their life. Yeah. And it's very hard. So anytime you want to talk more about labor and shortage, I'm happy to, but just appreciate the opportunity to speak to you in general, and really thankful for John Burns and the whole team to work with them. It's been a pleasure, our Outlook and our KBMI and just having the opportunity to have John speak to our attendees. We're grateful for it, and just super respectful from what the content you all produce and the respect you have in the industry.
Well, thank you for coming on. Thank you to listeners for listening. Of course, this has been Dean Worley for the New Home Insights podcast, and we will catch up again in a couple of weeks.